What's up everyone, it's Russo. I hope everyone is doing well. Please follow my Instagram at RussoLifts, just in case something happens to this YouTube channel. You can follow, message, and you can watch my daily story content on Instagram. I'll see you there. What's up everyone, it's Russo. I hope everyone is doing well. Today I wanted to talk about just the general theoretical pros and cons of a SARMs hybrid cycle, which is a TRT, HRT, aka testosterone base with a SARM selective androgen receptor modulator on top, versus a more traditional steroid cycle of an oral on top, meaning test and an oral on top. What are the perceived drawbacks as well as pros revolving around comparing these two types of setups for people to take note of? Because I know there are people going with hybrid cycles, and I know there are people who are like traditional cycles only is the only way they go. So I wanted to talk about some of the theoretical science, bro science, backed by some studies as well as blood work that you can make your own assumptions of. Obviously I'm not a know-it-all. You can feel free to write your thoughts down below in the comment section for everyone to discuss, but this is just my general opinion. There's no medical data that is going to concretely show you what happens when you stack multiple synthetic androgens on top of each other. There's just no data to go off of. Anyone can make an assumption, guess, based on what we see, but like I said, this is more theoretical, just for bodybuilding discussion and entertainment, so take it for what you want. So first perceived benefit, in my opinion, would be something like hair shedding mitigation, right? So if you did a traditional cutting cycle of testosterone plus Winstrol is DHT based and it's heavily known to cause hair shedding. I've had some friends who literally just pulled chunks of their hair out on high dosages of Winstrol. So you're dealing with a massive influx in DHT in the body, which is dihydrotestosterone, which is going to attack your hair follicles, make them fall out faster than they would if you didn't have higher dihydrotestosterone. And people go through great lengths and measures to protect their hair with DHT blockers, such as durasteride and finasteride. Hopefully I didn't butcher those, but anti-DHTs. So if you were to add in a SARM on top instead of Winstrol, that also gives a hardening look, such as S4 or MK2866, you could theoretically have less shedding, have less hair loss than the traditional Winstrol cycle. So that would be perceived benefit number one. Perceived benefit number two, in my opinion, would be overall lower toxicity compared to 17A methylated steroids. So for those who don't know, there's a 17A methylation on most oral steroids such as Dianabol. Now this protects Dianabol as it's passing through the liver, but also creates an insane amount of inflammation. And you can also see it with popular steroids like Superdrol as well, where if you're constantly dosing every day, you're constantly running your liver to the max, which causes liver toxicity, which you can get jaundice and you can go into liver failure from if ran too long. Now, let's just say the traditional cycle of testosterone plus D-bol for a bulking cycle was replaced with testosterone plus LGD4033, which is like a mini D-bol that has no 17-alkali methylation, but it's still toxic, right? It's not like completely free of toxicity. It's still going to raise ALT, AST, but theoretically you would, number one, not have the estrogen conversion to deal with of Dianabol, although the estrogen conversion is something that people say they don't want, but in reality, if you look at the science, Dianabol is so strong because of the estrogen conversion in the body, but you would not be facing massive estrogen sides, as well as you would not be facing immediate toxicity sides, meaning around 4 weeks of toxicity, in my opinion, would be built up with Dianabol, 4 to 5 weeks, whereas LGD theoretically you could extend longer based on your ALT and AST numbers, meaning that your ALT, AST would climb higher with Dianabol than actual LGD4033. So that would be avoiding toxicity on top. That would be the next perceived benefit. The next perceived benefit that I would go into would be prostate enlargement. So some SARMs, S4 particularly, I'll throw up a study, is known to not target the prostate that much. So other SARMs target and bind with the prostate. The bigger the prostate gets, the more your risk of prostate issues down the line. So that would be the third perceived benefit, would be, less prostate activation as far as the AR goes there. Now, it's not all sunshines and rainbows, because SARMs do weird things. And the weird thing that I've noticed with the hybrid cycles that I've learned personally is that they crash SHBG. So they crash sex hormone binding globulin. This has been proven with tons of blood work online, and I'm going to link up a study showing ostarine lowers SHBG by a significant percent. Now, I'm not going to make any guesses on why SHBG is lower. I'm assuming that the body doesn't know what to do with the SARM, and so it just starts crashing SHBG. But this leads to a point where there would be more free testosterone going on, meaning you would be way more prone to estrogen side effects in that regard. So this is strange, right? So you could have, theoretically, even though you're taking in a compound that, theoretically, even though you're playing around with a compound that doesn't have an estrogen conversion, it's lowering SHBG, pretty much crashing SHBG, I've seen in some blood work, to a point where the testosterone base now is way more free, right? Has way more estrogen conversion going on. So you're still facing, in my opinion, the same gynecomastia issues. So that's one thing. The next drawback, in my opinion, would be binding affinity of the SARMs. So SARMs have such a high binding affinity to the androgen receptor that they are going to beat natural testosterone. Any other form of androgen you got going on that has a lower binding affinity from the SARM is going to get beat out by the SARM. So again, lead to a lot more free test conversion into DHT and estrogen. So the things you're trying to block may not be, real, right? It may not work out the way those perceived benefits I said in the beginning were, because the weird thing with SHBG is, like, people always want to lower it, right? They always want SHBG to be low. They don't want any bound test. They want all their tests to be free. The more free tests you have, the more crazy your libido is, the more, sensitive you are to the test. But SHBG is also a transporter, right? It transports all the hormones around the body. So you want a normal amount of SHBG in there, and the SHBG crash is something that cannot be ignored. It can also be linked to problems with HDL, or problems with raising LDL as well, so it can be linked to cholesterol issues. So that's my thoughts. I wanted to see if people had some in-depth blood work that I could look at that shows SHBG crash. Personally, SHBG crash happened to me pretty badly with the injectable SARMs, and that was in an extreme experiment. But yeah, that's why you notice with the test base on the SARMs that you start to get estrogen sides. All this stuff starts going haywire because SHBG is crashing, which is causing more free testosterone, which is causing more testosterone conversion, as well as the SARM having a higher binding affinity means less of your testosterone is binding. So you're having more estrogen and DHT conversion from that. So my rule of thumb, and what you should take away if you do a hybrid SARM cycle, is to not go crazy with the testosterone, right? Lower the testosterone and you have way less issues. One of my biggest mistakes in how I fried my skin was when I experimented with S23 plus tests, and I had tests at 500. That's too high. That was too high. I was having way too much DHT conversion because of the binding affinity of S23. I had way more free tests going on. And now we know that SHBG was crashed too. So none of my tests was being binded with, which is good in some way, but causes way more conversions in other ways. So those are just some pros and cons. Definitely something to take note of is that overall, less toxicity can be ran for extended periods of time with SARMs versus 17A orals, right? 17A orals are horrible for the liver. That is one perceived drawback. But the other drawbacks of adding something in that doesn't have an estrogen conversion like a SARM, is it that much better than having something that does have an estrogen conversion but keeps SHBG still in the mix? I don't think there's any perceived benefit, is what I wanted to get on video and talk about. I think that it's not really that made out for it, right? You know, unless you lower the testosterone dosage. So if you plan to go with high testosterone, I would not add the SARM in there because of Shbg Crash. So hopefully you learned something, and by all means I will post links to the studies below, and I will see you guys in my next video.